trying to get that game back. I know you're fired up about the call. Did you get an explanation? What was said to you there?
Yeah, I didn't get really a lot of explanation on a lot of things. We thought we was probably 4 or 5 illegal contacts. Unfortunately, I can't challenge that. The one that Kevin didn't make a play in the end zone, he got tugged on, and that I thought it affected him finishing that play, but it wasn't pass interference. It was illegal contact happened before the ball was in the air. So yeah, just unfortunate. We can't put it in their hands. We got to make some more plays and finish. But I thought our guys fought. We had a chance to potentially tie the game. Obviously, we had a 2-point play ready.
Update on him.
Yeah, I think Cook should be okay. So, yeah, I thought he was a defensive receiver. They said he jumped. I didn't see him leave his feet there. So, same thing with the one on Brissett. They said it was above the knee. I think we got to look at player safety a little bit more when it comes to that.
Okay, let's go to Toronto here. Frank Stanichi up first. Frank.
Ryan, it seems to be more and more difficult, I think, to accept how close the games are. How frustrating is that?
It is. I mean, it's frustrating for everybody, right? But I feel for our players. I think, just want to find a way to get a win for them. I think we got to find a way to get some confidence. Each week we do some decent things, but it's just we're not getting enough. We got to score when we get in the red zone. We had some miscues there. Yeah, it's frustrating for sure, Frank. But there's no quit in us, and we're on to BC. Obviously, it's the best way to go. But it's been a tough go, and it's tough losing those close games, right? Sometimes you get your butt spanked, and it's tough when we've been right there in every game.
Your quarterback broke a personal record today for most yards. Speak on his game. I know he made a mistake, but it's pretty hard if you're a quarterback and you're not allowed to make any mistakes.
Well, that's kind of where we're at, right? We almost need Nick to play a perfect game. He's played really good football. Obviously, we wish they had that fumble back. We had some momentum going there. Go all the way down there and wanted to take a shot. It's not there. Let's just check it down. And sometimes I feel like we're just snake bitten. But I thought Nick gave us a chance to win.
Hey Ryan, obviously a lot of pressure has been put on Nick these last few weeks to try to pick you guys up. Yeah, what do you think is, especially looking at tonight's game, the rushing game, just it felt like you guys just weren't really able to get much going there. What do you think is part of the reason for that?
Yeah, I think we're just not getting any push up front. We had the one on 2nd and 2. We ended up having to sneak and get the first down on 3rd down. No push. D-Money's running into unblocked guys. And yeah, we got to find a way. Like you look at some of the passing yards, we're an extension of our run game where we're tossing the ball to receivers and getting on the perimeter. Those are run plays. We're just tossing it to them. So we felt like we had to get outside, and then we liked our zone regain. We're at the end cut does come. We were pulling it. We had good success to start the 3rd quarter doing that. So it's a run pass option. So we're trying to give us the opportunity to run the ball there. But yeah, I think when it's not going, I've been abandoning it, but it's tough to hang your hat on it, man. In that 2nd and medium. And at 1st and 10, we're stuck in second long, 2nd medium. We're not moving the chains running the football. So we got to get creative in our pass game. And like you looked with us, the speed sweeps that we did this week, we had good success on those.
You've had a lot of receivers contribute, especially tonight, but it seems like Jake Herzl just finds ways to make, tough plays for you. How impressive you've been with his game the last 2 games?
Yeah, I thought Jake's, turned it on. We got him going, later in the year last year. And, it was tough to get all those guys on the field. We decided to change the ratio, give Jake more opportunities. So I thought Jake's, done a good job for us. And, I think all those receivers, they're working their butts off, doing those things. There's some things we can get better at. But I think Jake gives us an added element of speed. And then, he gets called for the kicking when he's just trying to jump. And the, defender – was tackling him, and so he doesn't get to finish, and he wasn't obviously looking to kick the guy. I thought that was a tough call at that stage.
But like I heard you kind of saying that when I was walking in, a tough loss to take this one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they outlaw, right? But we had an option to win that football game, especially on the road. It's tough to win out west. We understand that, but where we're at in the season, we can't afford losing more games, right? So I just think those guys, just felt like we had a chance to win, and then just didn't get opportunity to finish on the last drive with the PI I thought was called. Normally they go with the call that's on the field unless it's clear and obvious. So I get that explanation from them all the time. I just don't know. I don't have a lot of answers for some of the stuff that I wanted to challenge, or some of the calls I thought we could have got. Just it wasn't our day.
I know the result wasn't there, but I mean, you guys were right there till the end. What'd you see on that last play that ended up being overturned?
It was it was two man on their part. I saw that might have the X on the outside, the guy that I threw it to. And then we had the running back in a nice little angle route who was going to be on the middle linebacker. And two man, there's usually, there's nobody in the middle of the field. So my thought process going in was like, all right, if Jake doesn't win on his outside route, come back and find D-Money. I'm sure he's going to, get us a big play underneath on this middle linebacker to get the first down. But, got back there and didn't really have the time to get through my progression. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, if I don't throw this to Jake, I'm going to end up getting sacked on third down and end the game with the ball in my hand. So I was like, I throw it to somebody. And, credit to them. They did a great job. Their D-line was coming after it, especially, on that last drive. And then we were good up front. So, credit to them. A lot of those guys, it's an unfortunate part of the game that a lot of the guys chasing me around and hitting me, are Jake and Brink and Robbie and, all guys that got to celebrate with last year. Now they're, causing havoc, but, we battled up front. We battled everywhere. But we unfortunately just had to turn some red zone field goals and a red zone touchdown.
You did have a career day. You were over 380 yards. So I guess you do have that against them a little bit, but what does that mean for you? What you guys were able to do with the offense? You talked about the pressure that you were seeing. How are you feeling in the offensive side of things?
You never want to, if you have 400 yards of offense, you essentially, you travel the length of the field 4 times, and you only come away with 1 touchdown. That's not, ideal. That's not really a winning formula. At that point, you need help everywhere else to kind of, take advantage of different opportunities. Because it's hard to win a game with just kicking field goals, especially red zone field goals. They're kind of, honestly, it kind of feels like a win for the defense. I know being on the offense side of the ball, you watching the field, they get in the red zone, all of a sudden you're holding a field goal. It's kind of like a momentum builder. So got to make sure that we're finishing there. The ball doinked off the crossbar. That was a very unfortunate first time this happened to me. And Dave was open in the end zone. It would have been a great touchdown to start the game, but it's part of football.
Ideally, putting the ball on the ground more. Is that what the Elks were doing to you guys, that you guys had to go to the air so much?
They did a really good job in the zone read game, kind of taking away our run, forcing us out on the edge passing. Receivers did a great job, making yards after the catch. I think our first touchdown drive of the second half, we probably called 5 or 6 RPOs in a row, I think. If not in a row, we called them 5 out of 6 plays. And, offense was, the receivers are getting 10, 15 more plus yards per play there. So, they did a good job with their game plan of, forcing us to pass the ball, to move it. And that's always, as the field condenses and the field shrinks and, it's definitely harder to find those windows, but at the same time, they're looking at the iPad. There were things that, possibly different decisions or different passes that could have maybe led to touchdowns instead of field goals.
Team-wise, I know there were some harsh words at the end of the game last week. How do you think you guys responded?
I think our team responded really well. You look at our special teams, I don't know if we gave up an explosive return. If it was, we didn't give a touchdown or anything. We had a couple of explosive and nice plays. I didn't understand the penalty on Herslow for his hurdle. But we kind of overcame that, took some more time to get down the field, but that was an unfortunate one. But overall, the defense held them, defense held them to 20 points if you don't include, some of the really short fields that they've got on 2 different possessions where they started basically in field goal range already. So I think our defense played and responded really well. And, we just got to make sure we're answering the bell and get both sides playing well at the same time.
Right.
Each and every game you've progressed, you've gotten better and better. Today, as was just mentioned, personal record. How are you maintaining your ability to improve? This is hard to take. It's not that you're getting blown out. It's that you guys are losing a little bit here, a little bit here. That must like 1,000 cuts. How are you rising above that to improve each and every game?
I think it's big credit to the offense around me. The offensive line has been getting better and better week in and week out. And that helps everybody. It helps me, of course, but, a receiver wins on a route, beats a DB, and we don't have the time to stick with the progression or get the ball off, it doesn't allow their moments to shine. And the offense has really kind of answered, the O-line has answered the bell and the call, throughout this season and really gotten better. And they've, I think the guys that we have up there are, really talented. We have a new left tackle, and he's only been in the building for a couple of weeks. I think he's still trying to figure out his way around BMO Field. And, the more chemistry they get, I think the better they're going to get. We just got to make sure, we start peaking and putting these things together, before it's too late. Because obviously we've shown we can play winning football. We can even play winning football for a majority of a game. But at the end, you say you could have won 4 games, you could have won 5 of the games that were close and things. But at the end of the day, we didn't. And the same thing can go for a team that's, 7-2 or 7-3, that won those games. Nobody really thinks about the idea that they could be 3-7 if they lost their close games instead of pulling it out in the last minute. So we got to make sure that we find a way, to get one more point on that board than the other team at the end of the game, regardless of how we're doing it.
I realize you might not have heard what was said, but it seemed the team came out very physical in the second half. Was it something that was said in the locker room?
No, it's been something that we've been preaching, and I think the defense really, they were firing all throughout practice. They did extra meetings. They really, were challenged, and I think they really stepped up to it. And, when you see guys like Cameron Judge and Derek and, the different defensive players making these monster hits, it really, it really inspires the whole team. And it creates energy. Coach Miller, had a great speech and talking to, our O-line and running backs earlier this week in practice, and really challenged them with the physicality and, putting people on the ground and taking the fight to them and always looking for that extra hit, following the ball and doing all those things that can, just kind of impose your will on a team outside of just the schematics of, who you're blocking, but how you're blocking, how you're finishing. And, I think they improved too. And, it's a shame, I think, when you play a lot better in a lot of different places than weeks prior and you don't get the win, because it kind of that loss overshadows all the improvement and great performances and work that was put in, around the team.
I know that at this time, congratulating you on a record performance for yourself, a personal performance, doesn't really help right now, but congratulations on that. Safe travels.
Thank you very much.
And Dave Morisuti, final questions.
Was it embarrassing?
Nick, obviously it's tough, especially with these close losses here. Do you guys take any positive that you guys are close in these games, or it's tough with each loss to see the positives?
It's definitely really tough with each loss, just as a competitor and you're losing. But the closeness of them and being in the games and being there, and you see it, you see the win and the possibility of the victory at the end. It does, in these situations, keep you from losing hope. I've been, in years prior, I was with Ottawa when, I think we were finished last or second last in the league. And I wasn't playing, but I was still, in the locker room and the sideline. And there's a difference when you're losing and you're not really close to winning, and you don't really feel like you're really in it. It's a completely different feeling than this and with this team. We just gotta make sure we take advantage of the breaks that we do get and the opportunities we get to put games away or extend leads or flip momentum, whatever it may be. And not make any kind of critical errors. Unfortunately, despite any kind of statistics, they made a great play and got the ball in my hands on one of the sacks. And, we stress ball security and, I tried tucking it away, but, they made a great play and you can't really lose the ball, especially in the red zone. I think that was our first red zone turnover this entire season. And I think they scored a touchdown off of the next drive. So, those kind of things, they're just amplified after a loss when you're looking at, what could have been different.
You've been on teams that have had some tough records. Do you think that it's just mental adjustments that this group needs to do to, turn things around, or do you think there are other things that that need to happen for this group to get back, and potentially try to continue to push for a playoff spot?
I don't think it takes, a big mental adjustment in most places. I have a lot of confidence, especially offensively with the guys we have on the field. You see a guy like Jake Herzler step on the field due to injuries and opportunities, and he's making the most of it. He's doing really well. And that just goes in all the work and prep he's put in for the past 2 years on the practice roster. We all have a lot of confidence in his ability, and that goes with everybody out there. They're all doing a great job on offense, making my job, easier, and the receivers are getting open and making great catches and things like that. So, in a mentality standpoint, I think we're doing really good, and we still believe in this team's ability to win games and win every game, remaining on our schedule. But we just got to make sure we're doing it, and we're making the corrections we need to make those few plays go our way that aren't going our way at the end of games.